The sound of shattering crystal echoes through a $50 million penthouse at 3:47 a.m. A woman's voice, trembling yet controlled, speaks into a phone. "Please, someone broke in, my boyfriend. There's so much blood." This single phone call from the highest floor of Dubai's most exclusive residential tower would trigger an investigation that would shock not just the Middle East, but the entire world of the ultra-wealthy. What appeared to be a tragic home invasion would unravel into something far more calculated, more intimate, and infinitely more disturbing. Welcome to Darklets Minds, where we explore the darkest corners of the human psyche. Today, we're diving into a case that proves one thing beyond doubt. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the stranger lurking in the shadows. It's the one sharing your bed. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind the closed doors of the ultra-wealthy? What deadly secrets might be hiding behind those perfect Instagram lives? By the end of this story, you'll never look at wealth and power the same way again. Dubai, 2024. A city of impossible skyscrapers and limitless luxury. A playground for the global elite where money can buy almost anything: privacy, pleasure, power. But as we're about to discover, it can't buy loyalty. And it certainly can't stop a bullet. Victor Blackwood wasn't born into this world of excess. At 50, the American tech billionaire had clawed his way to the top through a combination of brilliant innovation and ruthless business tactics that left competitors in ruins. As founder and CEO of Blackcore Technologies, he had transformed a small AI startup into a global empire worth over $7 billion. Born to a factory worker and a waitress in Detroit, Victor's childhood was defined by scarcity. While other kids played video games, he was taking apart computers and rebuilding them, teaching himself to code on outdated equipment. By 19, he dropped out of college to launch his first company. By 30, he'd sold it for $200 million. By 40, Blackcore Technologies was revolutionizing artificial intelligence and making Victor one of the wealthiest men in America. "Success isn't about being smart," he once told Forbes. "It's about being willing to do what others won't, to make the hard choices, to sacrifice." Those sacrifices included his first marriage, countless friendships, and any semblance of a normal life. But to Victor, it was all worth it. He had built something that would outlast him, something that changed the world. By 2024, Victor had everything a man could want. His primary residence was a 15,000-square-foot penthouse in Dubai's most exclusive building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering 360-degree views of the city and the Persian Gulf beyond. The interior was a masterpiece of minimalist luxury, rare marble, custom furniture, and an art collection valued at over $30 million. His daily routine was the stuff of fantasy for most. Morning workouts with celebrity trainers, business meetings conducted from his private yacht, dinners at restaurants where reservations were booked months in advance. His Black American Express card had no limit. His private jet stood ready at all times. His influence opened doors that remained firmly closed to even the merely wealthy. But for all his success, for all his power, Victor Blackwood was a man growing increasingly restless. The thrill of the chase, of building something from nothing, had faded. The endless meetings, the constant travel, the responsibility of thousands of employees weighing on his shoulders. It was becoming a gilded cage. And into this world of wealth and growing discontent stepped Sophia Devereaux. If Victor Blackwood represented old money and established power, Sophia Devereaux embodied new ambition and hungry determination. At 32, the French-American real estate broker had already made a name for herself in Dubai's ultra-luxury property market. With her striking beauty, olive skin, piercing green eyes, and a cascade of dark hair, Sophia turned heads wherever she went. But it was her razor-sharp intelligence and unrelenting drive that truly set her apart in a field dominated by men twice her age. "I don't sell properties," she once told Emirates Luxury magazine. "I sell lifestyles, dreams. I understand what my clients want before they can articulate it themselves." What the magazine profile didn't mention was Sophia's background. The small Brooklyn apartment where she grew up watching her single mother work 3 jobs to keep them afloat. It didn't mention the nights she went to bed hungry, or the second-hand clothes, or the scholarship that finally offered her escape from a life of perpetual struggle. By the time she arrived in Dubai in 2020, Sophia had reinvented herself completely. Her accent was polished, her wardrobe impeccable, her manners refined. No one would ever guess that beneath the Chanel suits and Louboutin heels was a woman who still sometimes woke up in a cold sweat, terrified of returning to poverty. People like us don't get second chances, her mother had told her once. So make the first one count. And Sophia had taken that advice to heart. Every client, every sale, every connection was a step further away from that Brooklyn apartment and closer to the security she craved more than anything. She was determined to build a fortress around herself so impenetrable that poverty could never touch her again. But for all her success, for all her carefully cultivated image, Sophia still felt like an outsider looking in. The ultra-wealthy clients she served lived in a world she could glimpse but never truly enter. Until Victor Blackwood. Their paths crossed at the International Luxury Property Expo in Dubai in late 2022. Sophia was representing an exclusive development of waterfront villas. Victor was looking for investment opportunities. I remember the moment perfectly. A colleague of Sophia's would later tell investigators. She spotted him across the room and just locked on, like a missile finding its target. Their first conversation was strictly professional, market trends, investment potential, projected returns. Victor was impressed by her knowledge, her confidence, her ability to speak his language of risk and reward. He invited her to continue their discussion over dinner. One dinner became two. Two became weekly meetings. By early 2023, their relationship had evolved from professional to personal, though both maintained the pretense of business discussions. For Victor, Sophia was a breath of fresh air, someone who challenged him intellectually while providing the admiration he'd grown accustomed to. She listened to his stories, laughed at his jokes, made him feel like the titan of industry he presented to the world. For Sophia, Victor represented everything she had ever wanted, not just wealth, but security, status, validation. He treated her to experiences she had only dreamed of: private jets to Paris for lunch, weekends on his yacht in the Maldives, shopping sprees where price tags were never discussed. "You deserve the best," he told her, draping a diamond necklace worth more than her annual salary around her throat. "Someone should have been giving you these things all along." And Sophia believed him, or wanted to believe him. In Victor's world, in his arms, she finally felt like she belonged. The outsider had found her way in. The girl from Brooklyn had arrived. But there was one problem. Victor Blackwood was not a man who gave his heart easily. And Sophia was falling deeper into a relationship where the power dynamics were dangerously unequal. By the fall of 2023, Sophia had all but moved into Victor's penthouse. Her own apartment, once a point of pride, now felt small and insignificant compared to the luxury she experienced with him. She kept it mainly for appearances, spending only the occasional night there when Victor was traveling for business. Their relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings spent in his private gym, days filled with their respective work, evenings enjoying Dubai's exclusive restaurants and clubs. To the outside world, they were the perfect power couple, the billionaire tech mogul and the beautiful real estate broker. But beneath the surface, insecurities festered. Victor never introduced Sophia as his girlfriend, always as my friend, or my real estate advisor. He never spoke of the future, of permanence. And though he was generous with gifts and experiences, he kept his business life carefully separated from their relationship. He compartmentalized everything. A former business associate of Victor's would later explain. Work was work, pleasure was pleasure, and never the twain shall meet. For Sophia, who had staked everything on this relationship, the uncertainty was becoming unbearable. She had glimpsed paradise, had tasted the security she craved, and the thought of losing it all was more terrifying than anything she could imagine. Then came the day that would change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November 2024. Victor was in America for business, and Sophia was using his laptop to research properties for a client. She shouldn't have been looking through his files. She knew that. But curiosity, or perhaps a deeper instinct, led her to open his recently accessed documents. What she found made her blood run cold. A comprehensive plan to liquidate his Dubai holdings. Transfer paperwork for his major assets back to America. A new corporate headquarters being established in New York. And most damning of all, an email to his executive team. "My time in Dubai has been productive, but it's time to consolidate operations. I'll be returning permanently to the States by January." January. Less than 2 months away. Sophia sat frozen, the implications washing over her like ice water. Victor wasn't just reorganizing his business, he was reorganizing his life. And she wasn't part of the plan. All the gifts, the trips, the whispered promises in the dark, they had meant nothing. She was just a temporary diversion, a pleasant companion during his time in Dubai. She scrolled further, her hands shaking. There it was in black and white, a memo about the penthouse. Prepare for sale by December 15th. Ensure all personal items are shipped to the New York residence by that date. All personal items. Not once did the document mention her. Not once did it acknowledge that this wasn't just his home, but had become hers too. In Victor's mind, she was as disposable as the furniture, something to be left behind when he moved on to the next chapter of his life. The realization hit her with physical force. She had given everything to this relationship, her time, her body, her heart. She had allowed herself to believe that she had finally escaped the insecurity of her past. And now, with a few keystrokes, Victor Blackwood was preparing to send her back to exactly where she started. No, not back to the beginning. Worse than the beginning, because now she knew what she would be missing. Now she had tasted the life she had always dreamed of, only to have it snatched away. As the Dubai sunset painted the penthouse in shades of gold and crimson, something shifted inside Sophia Devereaux. The fear and shock gave way to something colder, harder, more resolute. If Victor thought he could discard her so easily, he had gravely underestimated her. She hadn't clawed her way out of poverty, hadn't reinvented herself so completely, only to be treated like an afterthought. She closed the laptop, her decision made. Victor Blackwood had built an empire by making hard choices, by being willing to do what others wouldn't. Now, Sophia would show him that she had learned that lesson all too well. What drives someone to murder? Is it passion, blinding and immediate? Or is it something colder, more calculated, a decision made when all other options seem exhausted? For Sophia Devereaux, the choice to end Victor Blackwood's life wasn't made in a moment of rage. It was a solution to a problem, as businesslike as any deal she'd ever brokered. If you're fascinated by the psychology behind crimes of passion and wealth, subscribe to Darklet's Minds now. In our next segment, we'll take you inside Sophia's meticulous planning, how a woman with no criminal history prepared to commit the perfect murder in one of the most secure buildings in Dubai. And we'll reveal the fatal mistake that would ultimately lead to her downfall. What would you do if everything you'd worked for was about to be taken away? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and join us as we continue to explore the darkest corners of the human mind. The most dangerous predators don't strike in blind rage. They plan. They wait. They execute with precision that turns murder into art. For 3 weeks after discovering Victor's betrayal, Sophia Devereaux transformed herself into something far more lethal than a scorned lover. She became a student of death. Welcome back to Darklet's Minds. If you thought you understood the depths of human calculation in Act 1, prepare yourself. What you're about to witness is the methodical unraveling of a man worth billions by a woman with nothing left to lose. The Dubai penthouse that had once felt like Sophia's sanctuary now became her war room. Each night after Victor fell asleep, she would slip into his home office, using private browsing windows to conduct her research. Her search history would have chilled the blood of anyone who saw it. Home invasions in luxury buildings Dubai, police response times Burj District, undetectable poisons, how to disable security systems without leaving trace. She approached murder with the same meticulous attention to detail that had made her successful in real estate. Every angle considered, every contingency planned for, every risk assessed and mitigated. The perfect crime isn't about what you do, she read in one dark corner of the internet. It's about what you make others believe you didn't do. Sophia understood this instinctively. She wasn't just planning a murder, she was crafting a narrative, one where she was the grieving girlfriend, the second victim of a tragic robbery gone wrong. And like any good story, it needed to be believable down to the smallest detail. She studied the security protocols of their building, noting the blind spots in the camera coverage, the shift changes of the guards, the average time between security sweeps. She befriended the head of maintenance, extracting crucial information about the backup power systems and alarm protocols through seemingly innocent conversations. Miss Devereaux was always charming, always interested in how things worked. The maintenance manager would later tell police. I never thought anything of it. Lots of residents ask about security, especially the women living alone. But Sophia wasn't just gathering information. She was laying groundwork, mentioning to neighbors her concerns about recent break-ins in the area, commenting to the doorman about strange men she'd noticed watching the building, creating a backdrop against which her eventual story would seem plausible. Have you ever constructed an elaborate lie? Built it piece by piece until even you began to believe it? That's the dangerous territory Sophia was entering. A place where fiction and reality blur until the truth becomes whatever you need it to be. 3 days before the murder, Sophia faced her first moment of genuine doubt. It happened during a rare, intimate evening with Victor. They had dined on the Penthouse terrace, the Dubai skyline glittering around them like fallen stars. Victor had been unusually attentive, asking about her childhood, her dreams, the life she'd left behind in Brooklyn. "I never had much growing up," she told him, the wine loosening her usual guard. "My mother worked herself to death for minimum wage. I promised myself I'd never live like that." Victor had taken her hand then, his eyes softer than she'd seen them in months. "You've built something remarkable, Sophia. Most people in your position would have given up. But not you. That resilience, it's what I admire most about you." For a brief, disorienting moment, Sophia felt the foundations of her resolve crack. This was the Victor she had fallen for, the man who saw her, who understood her journey, who valued her not just for her beauty or her body, but for her strength. Later that night, as he slept beside her, she found herself studying his face. The lines around his eyes, the slight gray at his temples, the curve of his mouth. For the first time since discovering his plans, she allowed herself to remember that this was a human being. Someone who laughed, who dreamed, who had fought his own battles to reach the summit. Could she really do this? End a life? Become the very thing she had spent her entire existence fighting against, a statistic, a criminal, a cautionary tale? The memory of her mother's voice cut through her hesitation. "People like us don't get second chances." Sophia slipped from the bed and walked to the window, staring out at the city that had promised her everything and was now threatening to take it all away. No, she couldn't falter now. Victor had made his choice when he decided to discard her. Now she was making hers. By morning, her resolve had hardened once more. The brief window of doubt closed, sealed shut by the cold certainty of what awaited her if she didn't act. She would not return to poverty. She would not be erased from the life she had fought so hard to build. Victor Blackwood had to die. What separates those who merely contemplate violence from those who actually commit it? Is it opportunity? Desperation? Or something more fundamental? A missing piece in the moral architecture that allows some to cross lines others never would? Think about the worst thing you've ever done. Now multiply that darkness by 1,000. Could you live with yourself afterward? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. The final piece of Sophia's plan fell into place 2 days before the murder. Through connections in Dubai's shadowy underbelly, contacts she had made while selling properties to clients who didn't ask too many questions about privacy, she acquired a small, untraceable handgun. The weapon felt alien in her manicured hands, heavier than she expected, colder. She practiced holding it in the bathroom mirror when Victor was at work, her reflection showing a woman she barely recognized. "You only need to use it if something goes wrong," she told herself. The crystal vase is still plan A. The vase in question was a baccarat crystal piece that sat on Victor's bedside table. A gift from Sophia on their first anniversary, its heavy base and sharp edges made it the perfect improvised weapon. Poetic, she thought, that the token of her affection would become the instrument of his demise. The night before the murder, Sophia couldn't sleep. She lay beside Victor, listening to his steady breathing, mentally rehearsing every step of what was to come. The timing had to be perfect. Victor was leaving for another business trip to America in 2 days. If she waited until after he returned, it might be too late. His plans to liquidate his Dubai holdings would be in motion. She would have lost her leverage. No, it had to be tomorrow night. One final evening together. One last performance as the devoted girlfriend. And then, while he slept, she would rewrite both their futures with a single decisive act. As dawn broke over Dubai, Sophia finally drifted into a fitful sleep, her dreams filled with blood and crystal and the sound of sirens in the distance. November 22nd, 2024. The last day of Victor Blackwood's life began like any other. He woke early, worked out in his private gym, took calls with his executive team in America. Sophia prepared his favorite breakfast, avocado toast with poached eggs, fresh berries, black coffee. She moved through the morning with mechanical precision, her mind already operating in a parallel reality where tomorrow existed and Victor did not. "You're quiet today," he remarked as he scrolled through emails on his phone. Sophia smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. Just thinking about that property in Palm Jumeirah. The client is being difficult. A convenient lie. There was no difficult client, no property in Palm Jumeirah. But Victor nodded absently, already absorbed back into his digital world, the barrier between them as impenetrable as ever. Throughout the day, Sophia maintained her routine with eerie normalcy. She attended showings, met with clients, even stopped to have her nails done. A fresh coat of deep red polish that would later strike Detective Omar Khalid as an odd choice for a woman about to commit a violent crime. The most successful predators are the ones who blend in perfectly, Khalid would later tell his partner. The lion that looks just like the grass until the moment it pounces. By evening, everything was in place. Sophia had disabled the security cameras on their floor with a carefully timed power surge that would appear as a random technical glitch. She had prepared the scene for the break-in, marking the service entrance lock with subtle scratches, positioning the items that would appear to have been stolen. When Victor returned home at 8 p.m., she greeted him with a glass of his favorite whiskey and a kiss that lingered just long enough to seem genuine. "I thought we could stay in tonight," she suggested, her voice a perfect blend of casual and intimate. "I'll cook. We haven't done that in a while." Victor seemed pleased by the suggestion. Tired from a day of meetings, the prospect of a quiet evening at home appealed to him. He had no way of knowing that Sophia had chosen this scenario specifically because it would establish their presence in the penthouse all evening, with no staff or witnesses. She prepared his favorite meal, Wagyu steak, truffle mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus. She opened a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than her monthly rent at her first apartment. They ate on the terrace, the Dubai skyline providing a cinematic backdrop to their final meal together. "To us," Sophia toasted, raising her glass. The irony of the gesture was not lost on her. Victor clinked his glass against hers. "To us," he echoed, his eyes warm with an affection that might have weakened her resolve if she hadn't already passed the point of no return. They talked about nothing of consequence, a new restaurant opening, an art exhibition, gossip about mutual acquaintances. Sophia laughed at his jokes, touched his hand at the right moments, played her role flawlessly. All the while, the clock in her mind ticked steadily toward midnight, the hour she had designated for everything to change. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Victor poured himself another whiskey and settled onto the sofa with his tablet, checking the markets in New York before they closed. Sophia excused herself to take a bath, needing a moment alone to steady her nerves. In the cavernous marble bathroom, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her seemed both familiar and foreign, her features the same, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a coldness there, a calculation that hadn't existed before. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You have to do this." She ran the bath, adding the expensive oils Victor had brought back from his last trip to Paris. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood filled the steam-clouded room. She sank into the hot water, allowing herself one final moment of luxury before everything changed. By the time she emerged, wrapped in a silk robe, Victor had moved to the bedroom. He was propped against the headboard, still working on his tablet, glasses perched on the end of his nose. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening. "Come to bed," he said, setting the tablet aside. "I've been neglecting you lately. Too much work." The unexpected tenderness in his voice sent a jolt of something. Regret? Fear, through Sophia. But it was too late for second thoughts. The machinery of her plan was already in motion, the pieces arranged with such care that stopping now seemed more impossible than continuing. She slid into bed beside him, allowed him to pull her close, to kiss her with a passion that had been absent in recent weeks. She responded with practiced enthusiasm, her body going through the motions while her mind remained detached, clinical, focused on what was to come. Afterward, as Victor drifted towards sleep, Sophia lay awake beside him, counting his breaths, waiting for the deep, even rhythm that would signal he was fully unconscious. The penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city far below. At 1:17 a.m., Sophia slipped out of bed. Victor didn't stir. She moved silently to the closet, retrieving the gun from its hiding place inside a Hermes shoebox. She tucked it into the pocket of her robe, backup only, she reminded herself, and returned to the bedroom. The baccarat vase caught the dim light from the bathroom, its crystal facets throwing miniature rainbows across the wall. Sophia lifted it carefully, testing its weight in her hand. Heavy enough to do damage. sharp enough at the edges to ensure that damage would be fatal. She approached the bed, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain it would wake him. But Victor remained still, his breathing deep and regular, his face relaxed in sleep. Vulnerable. Trusting. For a suspended moment, Sophia stood over him, the vase raised, her body frozen in the liminal space between intention and action. In that moment, every possible future stretched before her. The paths where she walked away, where she woke him to confess her discovery, where she simply left without a word. But those futures all led back to Brooklyn. To struggle. To being nobody. With a swift, decisive movement, Sophia brought the vase down on Victor's head. The sound was sickening, a dull crack followed by the crystalline shatter of the vase itself. Victor's eyes flew open, confusion and pain registering in equal measure. He tried to speak, a gurgling sound emerging instead as blood began to pool beneath his head. Sophia struck again, and again, her movements mechanical, divorced from the screaming voice in her head. Blood sprayed across the Egyptian cotton sheets, across her silk robe, across her face and hands. The metallic smell of it filled the air, mingling with the lingering scent of jasmine from her bath. Victor's struggles weakened, then ceased altogether. His eyes, still open, stared at nothing. The man who had built an empire, who had changed the face of technology, who had held her in his arms just hours before, was gone. Sophia stood motionless, the broken stem of the vase still clutched in her bloodied hand. The silence in the room was absolute, pressing against her eardrums like a physical force. She had done it, crossed the line that separated her from monsters, become something she had never imagined possible. But there was no time for reflection, for the horror of realization to set in. The clock was ticking. She had a crime scene to stage, a story to construct, a performance to deliver that would determine whether she walked away with everything or lost it all. With clinical detachment, Sophia began to create chaos from the ordered luxury of the penthouse. She scattered Victor's belongings, his watch collection, his wallet, the cash he kept in his desk drawer. She overturned furniture, broke a window in the service entrance, created the impression of a desperate search for valuables. Then she turned to herself. The silk robe, now ruined with Victor's blood, went into a plastic bag to be disposed of later. She showered quickly, washing away the physical evidence of what she had done, watching the water run red, then pink, then clear down the drain. Dressed in fresh clothes, she returned to the bedroom to complete the final touches. Using a small knife, she inflicted a shallow cut on her own palm, evidence of her struggle with the intruders. She smeared some of Victor's blood on her arms and face, creating a tableau of victimhood. Then, at precisely 3:47 a.m., a time she had calculated would allow for the completion of her staging while ensuring rapid police response, Sophia picked up her phone and dialed 911. "Please," she sobbed into the phone, her voice cracking with what sounded like genuine terror. "Someone broke in my boyfriend. There's so much blood." The performance had begun. What would you do if you had just committed the perfect murder? If you were standing over the body of someone who had once held you, loved you, trusted you? Would your hands shake as you dialed for help? Would your voice betray you as you lied to the first responder? The human mind is remarkably adaptable. In moments of extreme stress, we become capable of compartmentalizing in ways that would terrify us in our normal state. We can step outside ourselves, become observers of our own actions, detach from the horror of what we've done. This is what Sophia Devereaux did as she waited for the police to arrive. She sat on the floor beside Victor's body, careful not to disturb the scene she had so meticulously created, and she rehearsed her story one final time. She and Victor had been asleep. A noise woke her. 3 men in masks were in the bedroom. They demanded the safe combination. Victor refused. They attacked him. She fought back but was overpowered. They took jewelry, watches, cash. They fled through the service entrance. She called 911 immediately. Simple, plausible, verifiable only by a woman covered in the victim's blood and her own tears. As the distant wail of sirens grew closer, Sophia allowed herself one final look at Victor Blackwood, the man who had given her a glimpse of everything she had ever wanted and who had been prepared to take it all away. In death, he seemed smaller somehow. Just a man, after all. Not a titan. Not a god. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and in that moment, she almost meant it. The first officers arrived within minutes, followed shortly by Detective Omar Khalid of Dubai's Major Crimes Unit. At 45, Khalid was a veteran investigator with a reputation for seeing through the performances that killers inevitably staged. From the moment he stepped into the blood-spattered penthouse, something about the scene struck him as wrong. It wasn't anything specific at first, just an investigator's instinct, honed by years of separating truth from lies. The overturned furniture seemed too deliberately placed. The broken window had glass falling in the wrong direction. And the woman sobbing in the corner, her designer pajamas stained with blood, was just a little too composed beneath her apparent distress. "Miss Devereaux," he said, approaching her with deliberate calm. "I'm Detective Khalid. I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me exactly what happened here." Sophia looked up, her green eyes swimming with tears that caught the light from the crime scene lamps. She was beautiful even in tragedy, perhaps especially in tragedy. Her voice trembled appropriately as she recounted her story, hitting every beat she had rehearsed. Khalid listened, his expression neutral, giving nothing away. But his mind was cataloging inconsistencies, noting the details that didn't quite align. The lack of defensive wounds on Victor's hands, the precise nature of the blows to his head, the undisturbed items of value that robbers had inexplicably overlooked. "And you didn't see their faces?" he asked when she had finished. "These men who broke in? They wore masks," Sophia said, her gaze steady despite the tears. "Black masks. I couldn't see anything but their eyes." Khalid nodded, making a note in his small black notebook. "And the security system? Was it activated? A flicker of something, calculation?" Crossed Sophia's face before she answered. "Victor always sets it before bed. It must have malfunctioned, or they knew how to disable it." "I see," Khalid said, his tone revealing nothing of his growing suspicion. "We'll need to check the logs, of course, and the building's external cameras." For the first time, a genuine flash of concern appeared in Sophia's eyes. "Of course," she said, her voice slightly higher than before. "Whatever you need." As the crime scene technicians worked around them, photographing evidence and collecting samples, Khalid continued his gentle questioning. Where had she and Victor been earlier that evening? Had he mentioned any threats, any concerns about his safety? Did he have enemies? Sophia answered each question with the right balance of cooperation and grief-stricken confusion. She was good, better than most suspects Khalid had interviewed over the years. But there was something rehearsed about her responses, as if she had anticipated his questions and prepared her answers in advance. By dawn, the initial investigation was complete. Victor's body had been removed, the evidence collected, the statements taken. Sophia, examined by paramedics and found to have only minor injuries, was allowed to remain in the penthouse, though Khalid made it clear that the bedroom was off-limits until further notice. "We'll need you to come to the station later today to formalize your statement," he told her as he prepared to leave. "And Miss Devereaux, don't leave Dubai. We'll have more questions." Sophia nodded, pulling a shock blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I wouldn't dream of it, Detective. I want whoever did this caught as much as you do." Khalid held her gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable. "I'm sure you do," he said finally, before turning to leave. As the door closed behind him, Sophia exhaled slowly. The first hurdle had been cleared. The initial investigation hadn't revealed any obvious flaws in her staging. The detective was suspicious. She had expected that, but suspicion wasn't evidence. And without evidence, she was just the traumatized girlfriend of a murder victim. She moved to the window, watching as the first light of dawn painted the Dubai skyline in shades of gold and rose. In a few hours, the news would break. The murder of American tech billionaire Victor Blackwood would dominate headlines around the world. And at the center of the storm would be Sophia Devereaux, grieving partner, witness to a tragedy, and the woman who stood to inherit a substantial portion of his fortune if she played her cards right. The game had only just begun. By noon, the story had exploded across global media. "Tech billionaire murdered in Dubai penthouse," screamed the headlines. Victor's face, handsome, confident, alive, stared out from news websites and television screens worldwide. And alongside his image, increasingly, was Sophia's. The victim's girlfriend, French-American real estate broker Sophia Devereaux, was present during the attack but survived with minor injuries, reported CNN. Sources close to the investigation say Ms. Devereaux is cooperating fully with Dubai authorities. What the reports didn't mention was the growing list of inconsistencies that Detective Khalid was quietly compiling. The security system that had mysteriously malfunctioned just hours before the murder. The building's external cameras that showed no sign of intruders entering or leaving during the time frame Sophia had described. The lack of forced entry at any access point except the service door, which showed signs of being damaged from the inside, not the outside. Most damning of all was the preliminary autopsy report, which indicated that Victor had been struck while lying down, likely asleep, with no defensive wounds on his hands or arms. Not the pattern one would expect in a confrontation with armed intruders. But Khalid kept these findings close to his chest. In his experience, suspects were most likely to make mistakes when they believed they were getting away with their crimes. So he maintained the pretense that Sophia's story was being taken at face value, even as his team quietly dug deeper into her background, her relationship with Victor, and her potential motives. Meanwhile, Sophia was playing her role to perfection. She gave a tearful interview to a sympathetic reporter, describing her terror during the home invasion and her devastation at losing the love of my life. She appeared fragile yet dignified, a woman shattered by tragedy but determined to see justice done. Behind the scenes, however, she was already laying groundwork of a different kind. Within hours of Victor's death, she had contacted his attorneys, inquiring about his will and the status of his Dubai assets. She had reached out to the executive team at Blackcore Technologies, positioning herself as someone who had been privy to Victor's most recent wishes and plans. He talked about making changes, she told his chief financial officer during a call that was ostensibly about funeral arrangements. About ensuring I would be taken care of if anything happened to him. The CFO, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, had murmured non-committal responses. But Sophia was undeterred. She had planted the seed, and in the chaos following Victor's death, seeds had a way of taking root before anyone noticed they had been sown. 3 days after the murder, as Victor's body was being prepared for transport back to America for burial, Detective Khalid made his first significant move. He requested that Sophia come to the station for a follow-up interview, a seemingly routine procedure that was anything but. In a sparse interrogation room, with only a table, 3 chairs, and a recording device between them, Khalid began to gently but persistently pick apart Sophia's story. "Miss Devereaux," he said, his tone conversational, "I've been reviewing the security footage from your building. It's quite comprehensive." Sophia nodded, her expression appropriately solemn. Victor insisted on the best security. Ironic, isn't it? Khalid smiled thinly. Indeed. What's interesting is that between 10 p.m. on the night of the murder and 4 a.m. when the first officers arrived, there is no record of anyone entering or leaving your floor except the emergency responders. A flicker of tension crossed Sophia's face, quickly masked. "As I told you, Detective, they must have disabled the system somehow. That would be quite sophisticated for a random break-in. Wouldn't you agree?" Khalid leaned forward slightly. "And then there's the matter of the service entrance. Our forensic team found that the damage to the lock appears to have been made from the inside, not the outside." Sophia's pulse quickened, but her expression remained steady. "I don't know anything about locks or forensics, Detective. I only know what I saw, which was 3 masked men who somehow entered a secure penthouse without being recorded, attacked Mr. Blackwood without him putting up any fight, and then vanished without a trace." Khalid's voice remained even, almost gentle. "You can understand why this presents certain challenges for our investigation." For the first time, Sophia felt a tendril of genuine fear curl through her stomach. The detective knew more than he was saying. He was testing her, watching for cracks in her carefully constructed narrative. But Sophia Devereaux had not come this far to falter now. She leaned forward, her green eyes locking with Khalid's dark ones, and allowed real tears to well up. "Detective," she said, her voice breaking just enough, "I watched the man I love die in front of me. I tried to fight them off. I failed. And now, instead of helping me find who did this, you're treating me like I'm a suspect." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I've cooperated with every request. I've answered every question. But I will not sit here and be accused of murdering the only person who ever truly cared about me. It was a calculated risk, showing anger rather than fear, indignation rather than compliance." But Sophia knew that an innocent woman wrongly suspected would react with outrage, not submission. Khalid observed her performance with the detached interest of a man who had seen many such displays over the years. "No one is accusing you of anything, Miss Devereaux," he said calmly. "I'm simply trying to reconcile certain inconsistencies in the evidence." "Well, reconcile them without me," Sophia snapped, gathering her handbag. "Unless you're charging me with something, I'm leaving. And I'll be calling Victor's attorneys on my way out. Khalid made no move to stop her. Of course. You're free to go. For now. Those last two words hung in the air between them, a quiet warning that this was far from over. As Sophia strode out of the police station, her composure intact until she was safely inside the waiting car, Detective Khalid turned to his partner, who had been observing from behind the one-way glass. She's good, the partner remarked. Almost had me convinced. Khalid nodded thoughtfully. Almost. But the best liars always reveal themselves eventually. They can't help it. The truth wants to be told. He picked up the file containing the preliminary findings from Victor's laptop. And I think our next conversation with Miss Devereaux will be very interesting indeed. Have you ever watched someone who thinks they're getting away with something? There's a particular kind of confidence they exude. A brittle, gleaming shell that looks impenetrable until the moment it shatters completely. As the investigation into Victor Blackwood's murder entered its second week, Sophia Devereaux maintained that shell with remarkable discipline. She appeared appropriately grief-stricken in public, dressed in elegant black ensembles for her meetings with Victor's attorneys and business associates. She spoke of him with a catch in her voice, referring to their plans and dreams in a way that subtly reinforced her position as more than just a girlfriend, as a partner, a confidant, someone with a legitimate claim to his legacy. But beneath the performance, cracks were beginning to form. The first came in the form of a witness, a security guard from a neighboring building who had been taking a cigarette break around 2 a.m. on the night of the murder. From his position, he had a clear view of the service entrance to Victor's building, the same entrance Sophia claimed the intruders had used. No one went in or out, he told Detective Khalid with absolute certainty. I was there the whole time, from 1:30 until nearly 3. The door never opened. The second crack appeared when forensic analysis of Victor's laptop revealed searches for Dubai asset liquidation and corporate restructuring. Searches that had been made while Sophia was alone in the penthouse, using Victor's login credentials. And the third, most damning piece of evidence came from an unexpected source, the art. Victor Blackwood had been an avid collector of contemporary art, his penthouse filled with pieces worth millions. What Sophia hadn't known, what no one except Victor and his security consultant had known, was that one particular piece, a minimalist sculpture positioned in the bedroom, contained a hidden camera. The camera had been installed not out of paranoia, but as part of an elaborate security system designed to protect Victor's art collection. It activated automatically whenever the penthouse alarm system was disarmed after midnight, a precaution against art thieves who might target the collection while residents slept. On the night of the murder, that camera had captured everything. Detective Khalid reviewed the footage alone in his office, watching in grim silence as Sophia Devereaux rose from bed, retrieved the crystal vase, and with methodical precision, ended Victor Blackwood's life. He watched as she staged the scene, injured herself, created the chaos that was supposed to suggest a robbery gone wrong. It was, in its own terrible way, impressive. A performance worthy of the highest accolades, executed with the kind of precision that came from meticulous planning and absolute conviction. But it was also, undeniably, murder in the first degree. Armed with this evidence, Khalid prepared for the final confrontation. He had one question left unanswered. Why? What had driven this successful, intelligent woman to such an extreme act? The footage showed the how, but not the why. And in Khalid's experience, understanding the motive was often the key to securing a confession. He arranged for Sophia to come to the station one more time, framing it as a routine follow-up. She arrived looking immaculate as always, though there were shadows beneath her eyes that even expert makeup couldn't fully conceal. Thank you for coming in, Miss Devereaux, Khalid said, gesturing for her to take a seat in the same interrogation room where they had spoken before. I just have a few more questions to clarify some details. Sophia nodded, her posture relaxed, confident. She believed she was still in control of the narrative. Of course, Detective. Anything to help catch whoever did this to Victor. Khalid smiled thinly. That's actually why I asked you here today. We've made a breakthrough in the case. Something flickered in Sophia's eyes, a momentary tensing that she quickly masked. That's wonderful news. Have you identified the intruders? In a manner of speaking. Khalid opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed the bedroom sculpture, its sleek lines and minimalist design, making it appear like nothing more than an expensive decoration. Are you familiar with this piece, Miss Devereaux? Sophia glanced at the photo, her expression puzzled. Of course. It's a Kunz. Victor paid over $1 million for it last year. It's a beautiful piece, Khalid agreed. But it's also something else. Something I don't think you were aware of. He pressed a button on his laptop, and the screen on the wall flickered to life. The footage began to play, crystal clear, undeniable. Sophia rising from bed. Sophia taking the vase. Sophia bringing it down on Victor's head with calculated force. The color drained from Sophia's face as she watched herself commit murder in high definition. Her hands, resting on the table, began to tremble. For several long moments, she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the screen as the damning evidence continued to unfold. When the footage ended, Khalid closed the laptop gently. I think it's time we had an honest conversation, don't you? Sophia's carefully constructed world was collapsing around her. The performance she had maintained for days, the lies she had told with such conviction, all rendered meaningless by 30 minutes of unblinking digital truth. I want a lawyer, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Khalid nodded. That's your right. But before we go down that road, there's something else you should see. He slid another document across the table. It was a printout of an email from Victor to his attorney, dated just 3 days before his death. As discussed, it read, "Please draw up the necessary paperwork to include Sophia in my will. I've decided to make it official. The ring is being delivered next week." Sophia stared at the words, uncomprehending at first. Then slowly, the implication dawned on her. Victor hadn't been planning to leave her behind. He had been planning to propose, to make her a permanent part of his life, his fortune, his future. She had killed the one person who had truly intended to give her everything she wanted. A sound escaped her then, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob, but something broken and terrible that seemed to come from a place beyond conscious control. Her shoulders slumped, the perfect posture finally giving way to the weight of what she had done. "He never told me," she said, her voice hollow. "I found the restructuring plans, the asset transfers. I was so sure he was going to leave me with nothing." Khalid watched her, his expression not unkind despite the circumstances. "And that was something you couldn't allow." "You don't understand," Sophia said, looking up at him with eyes that had gone flat and dull. "I came from nothing. Less than nothing. I fought for every single thing I have. And Victor, he was going to take it all away. Send me back to where I started. I couldn't go back to that life." "So you took his instead," Khalid said quietly. Sophia didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The performance was over. The truth, as Khalid had predicted, had found its way to the surface. As officers entered to formally arrest her, Sophia Devereaux, who had reinvented herself so completely, who had climbed so far from her beginnings, who had been willing to kill to maintain the life she had built, finally allowed the facade to crumble entirely. In that moment, she was neither the polished real estate broker to the elite nor the calculating murderer who had almost executed the perfect crime. She was simply a woman who had gambled everything on a desperate act and lost more than she could ever have imagined. What drives someone to murder? Is it love, greed, fear, or something more fundamental? The terror of returning to a life you've spent everything to escape? For Sophia Devereaux, the answer was all of these and none of them. She killed not out of hatred for Victor Blackwood, but out of love for the life he represented, a life of security, of status, of never again being the girl from Brooklyn who went to bed hungry. The tragic irony is that in her desperate attempt to secure that life, she destroyed the very thing that would have given it to her freely. If this exploration of wealth, power, and the psychology of murder fascinates you, hit that subscribe button and join the Darklets Minds community. In our final segment, we'll take you inside Sophia's trial, the international media frenzy it created, and the unexpected revelations that emerged about both victim and killer. What would you sacrifice to maintain a life you felt you deserved? How far would you go to avoid returning to a past you'd fought to escape? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and join us as we continue to explore the darkest corners of the human mind. Wealth plus betrayal plus desperation equals murder. But what happens when you add one final variable to this deadly equation? The truth. Welcome back to Darklets Minds. In our final chapter of the Dubai Penthouse murder, we witness how even the most carefully constructed lies eventually collapse under their own weight. As news of Victor Blackwood's murder dominated headlines worldwide, Sophia Devereaux found herself fighting a battle on two fronts. By day, she navigated the growing suspicions of Detective Khalid. By night, she waged a different war, against Victor's family who had emerged from the shadows to challenge her claims to his fortune. She was never more than a temporary distraction, Victor's sister told reporters outside the Dubai courthouse. My brother was generous with gifts, not with his legacy. But Sophia had come too far to surrender. She hired Dubai's most prestigious law firm, claiming Victor had made verbal promises about their future together. She spoke of shared business ventures, of plans they'd discussed late into the night, of a future that had been stolen not just from him, but from both of them. All the while, Detective Khalid's investigation tightened like a noose around her elegant neck. The security footage that showed no intruders. The forensic evidence that contradicted her story of a struggle. The browser history on Victor's laptop showing searches for Dubai asset liquidation, made while he was provably elsewhere. Each inconsistency alone might be explained away. Together, they formed a pattern that pointed inexorably toward one conclusion. Sophia Devereaux had murdered Victor Blackwood. But Khalid needed more than circumstantial evidence. He needed something definitive, something that would break through Sophia's impeccable performance. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Victor's art collection. Mr. Blackwood was paranoid about his art, his security consultant explained to Khalid. He had cameras hidden in several pieces, activated whenever the alarm system was disarmed after midnight. The footage was damning, crystal clear, unambiguous. Sophia rising from bed, taking the vase, bringing it down on Victor's sleeping form with calculated precision, then methodically staging the scene to suggest a robbery gone wrong. When confronted with this irrefutable evidence, Sophia's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. "You don't understand," she told Khalid, her voice hollow. "I found his plans to liquidate everything in Dubai. He was going to leave me with nothing. Send me back to where I started." The final, cruel irony was revealed in Victor's email to his attorney, dated just days before his death. "Please draw up the necessary paperwork to include Sophia in my will. The ring is being delivered next week." She had killed the one man who had truly intended to give her everything she wanted. The trial of Sophia Devereaux became a global sensation, a modern morality tale about ambition, deception, and the desperate lengths some will go to escape their past. The prosecution painted her as a calculating gold digger who murdered for money. The defense argued she was a woman driven to extremes by fear and insecurity. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. When the verdict came, guilty of first-degree murder, Sophia showed no emotion. The mask she had worn so perfectly had become her actual face, the performance her only reality. As she was led away to begin her life sentence, Detective Khalid watched with a mixture of professional satisfaction and human sadness. "The tragedy," he later told reporters, "is that she killed the future she was so desperate to secure." Victor Blackwood's journal, discovered among his personal effects, revealed a man who had genuinely fallen in love with Sophia, who had seen in her the same hunger, the same drive that had propelled his own rise from poverty, who had planned to make her not just his wife, but his partner in both life and business. "She reminds me of myself," he had written just weeks before his death. "Brilliant, unstoppable, willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. I've finally found my equal." In her desperate attempt to hold on to a life she thought was slipping away, Sophia Devereaux had destroyed the very thing that would have given her everything she ever wanted. What drives someone to murder? Is it greed, fear, or something deeper? The terror of returning to a life you've spent everything to escape? If this exploration of wealth, power, and the psychology behind crimes of passion has fascinated you, I need you to do 3 things right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments what case you want me to cover next. This is Darklet's Minds, where we explore the darkest corners of the human mind. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the stranger lurking in the shadows. It's the one sharing your bed.